This is Geographically Challenged episode number 55, the post-RMR wrap-up. There's lots to talk about, lots of shenanigans. We got a little bit wrong with our predictions, some more than others, but we'll get into that. And first of all, we got to welcome Bleh back. He's back from his little holiday doing whatever it was that he was doing. But how was your experience over at the RMR, Bleh?
It was great. Obviously, I was there for the EU and the Asia. Asia was a little rough because I think we had one day off in between, then had to completely switch my sleep cycle. I had to wake up early, 1:30 a.m., whatnot. But yeah, the event was overall very smooth. It was the Perfect World guys running it over in Shanghai, very similar to CAC. And I feel like it was even more smoother than the CAC, right? Like games were happening on time. I think PGL also had a few of their own crew in Shanghai as it was happening. I'm not sure if it was like the admins or like production people. I think it was a bit of both, right? So the comms were very clear, like the games are going live on time. Yeah, considering it was a remote broadcast, it didn't really feel like a remote broadcast. It felt like it was actually happening in the same city as we were in Bucharest. So all in all, from the production side of things,
I have to say, I was a little bit pissed off actually, because, you know, when I went to go and do the RMR, our first day got cancelled. We had mega mad delays and it was just a shit fight. And then I'm watching your fucking first games are like 13-2 or 13-3 or something like that. And I'm just like, man, this is just not fair. You know, I didn't get the good experience. But yeah, I was really glad to see it went well. I thought as well, I pretty much watched the whole thing. I was sitting there all day long, having a good time. You know, the games rolled through pretty quickly. There was no issues. Didn't really have any concerns, to be quite honest with you. I saw some complaints from some players that maybe the setup wasn't
talk about it later.
What it needed to be, but others were saying it was good. I never heard anything when I was at Extremesland. I don't know if the setup was any different from Extremesland to the RMR, so there's that. But yeah, look, we can get into that obviously when we talk about certain teams, and I think we should just, you know, crack on into it, right? We've got a few things to sort of break down here. There was a lot of interesting results and stuff like that. I'll start with Twisted Minds, Myth Avenue Gaming, and JiJieHao. I've kind of like put them together because I feel like there's not really a huge amount to kind of talk about with these guys. Like, they rocked up, they did what you'd expect to do, which is basically they got blasted a little bit out of the competition. But, you know, we saw some good stuff. I thought Twisted Minds, JiJieHao, there was a couple of interesting things coming through from them. A couple of good players in there, which is kind of what you want to see. But unfortunately, you know, it didn't really do enough to say, yep, the Middle East deserved the 2 spots, or that, you know, maybe we're going to be seeing some sort of a resurgence coming through from Southeast Asia or rest of Asia, because none of those teams really at the end of the day looked super competitive. And so still a bit of a ways to go for those regions, unfortunately. At least as far as our predictions for those teams were concerned, those ones we kind of got bang on.
Yeah, I feel like for MAG, I'm going to, you know, obviously give them a little bit of, be a little softer, a little gentler on them, right? Coming in last minute, they had... Who was it? Lan standing as a stand-in, right? Coming in, so a little rough situation right there. Twisted Minds just really completely outplayed, right? That they weren't really, again, the same scenario for them. JiJieHao, actually, I really like the CS they were playing, right? They had a very narrow. Did they lose? Yeah, they lost to Tyloo in a very narrow fashion. Was Tyloo, you know, on the comeback, and then they completely destroyed Twisted Minds, and then got smacked in turn by Grayhound, who were looking really good on that day. I really like, you know, it was basically EUCS, right? It just reminded me of some tier 2 EUCS, tier 2, tier 2.5 EUCS. I think Issa looked really, really sharp, considering, you know, this is the first time that I've seen him play ever since he came back from Valorant. So he was looking very solid. Mini was a standout for me, the Lebanese player, right? You had Vital and Mini coming in from Lebanon, and Mini was honestly, like, his mechanical ability and just his overall awareness was so very solid, considering, you know, the rest of the team, so to speak. And I feel if this team is still gonna, you know, try and compete in the future, if they want to really be a proper team, there is a base which we can work with, right? I feel like not Dakos, I think Alien was solid as well. He did kind of drop off in the Greyhound game, but he was hitting his shots with the AWP. I'm looking at Alien, I'm looking at Issa, I'm looking at Mini, and if we can get a couple more players from the region, this could be a solid team overall, a team that could actually, I personally feel, play even in EU. And if the next RMR comes around, I think they can be pretty competitive. Maybe not qualify, you know, because you have a couple of these really strong teams like the Mongolz and hopefully the next iteration of Grayhound, Lynn Vision and whatnot. But I think they could potentially easily crack the top 4. In fact, they could potentially crack the top 4 here at this event if maybe they'd faced someone else, more from Grayhound.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they would have got that draw against Tyloo again, but obviously that's not how it works. And I guess you got to win your BO1s. That's kind of the takeaway. Did you have anything to add for those guys, Pilski?
I think it's a continuation of what we've seen from other kind of Middle Eastern mixed teams. Obviously, we know that Israeli players and some other players from certain regions of the Middle East can play in Europe. Gives you a really good opportunity and ability to be able to practice against very solid opposition and become a very good counter-strike team. And that is the very clear way forward for any Middle Eastern teams that actually want to crack into the major from the Asia RMR. As for the rest of Asia, I really think they're much further behind than someone like a JiJieHao would be. Or a Twisted Minds, for example. They really need to think about more so sticking together for much longer, having more representation from teams of that region and South Asia, for example, start to grind through things like ESL Challenger and whatnot before they can or even like Sky Esports and things like that before they can really think about doing damage at something like an RMR.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think the unfortunate reality as well that I've seen recently is for Myth Avenue, I think Ariukul and Tugu, the two Mongolians, departed the roster, which I thought, just from a quick kind of look at those games, I didn't really pay a huge amount of attention, to be quite honest, to the Myth Avenue games because they weren't, the particularly most interesting ones. But I thought from what I saw, those two were kind of the standouts actually on that roster as well. So, I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? Mongolian CS in a good spot at the moment. Those guys are probably doing pretty well for themselves. Had a bit of a crack at the RMR. Did reasonably well individually, I thought. Obviously, the team didn't really work out for them, and now they're going to, I assume, go back to a Mongolian team and sort of try to work it that way, which might not be a bad shout for them as individuals. I don't know what that means for Myth Avenue, because, look, it's looking like a pretty interesting prospect. Obviously, you've still got some decent players in there, but we'll obviously have to see whether or not, like you say, Pilski, they're going to stick together or if things are going to change up at all with regards to that. But look, I don't think we really want to be talking about these three teams anyway, so let's get on into the fun side of the conversation. We'll talk Tyloo, one of the first teams that was actually knocked out beyond the ones that we expected to see disappearing. And man, I mean, this is another one that we really called. And I'm going to say, Pilski, I fucking called this one. I was like, man, do we even put them in? Will be competitive, or do we put them in Dark Horse? I don't know if they deserve to be and will be competitive at this point.
They actually somehow managed to disappoint me because my standard for Tyloo was they're going to beat the rest of everyone else, and they're going to do it in reasonably good fashion. I didn't think too much about Atox, and look, let's be real, the session they beat Tyloo in doesn't still fill me with a ton of confidence, although they did obviously take a map off of Grayhound and push Grayhound very, very close as well. In that very, very close map, but then the other two maps were kind of blowouts, right? So I still don't know if I'm, thinking Atox is anything special, but the Tyloo losing such one-sided maps to them really managed to disappoint me this event. And if this doesn't cause change in Tyloo, then I really don't know what will. I mean, at the end of the day, they get knocked down in the upper bracket by Lynn Vision in a pretty, stock standard game. That is expected. I expected Lynn Vision to beat Tyloo because every Chinese rival to this Tyloo core always has their number, but they struggled to beat JiJieHao in a best of one and then get stomped by Atox in the lower final. That's unacceptable.
Yep. I have to agree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is an unacceptable result for Tyloo, which is pretty much what I said on Twitter, and I think that, as you've said, if that doesn't prompt some kind of change going into the next major cycle for Tyloo, particularly considering it's going to be a major in Shanghai, I don't really know what will. If this doesn't cause changes, then I think we just see this team continue their run until they die. But from what I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen these rumors as well, Bleh, there are some rumors floating around that both Advent and Kaze are going to be benched. I believe it was Damyo on a stream that mentioned that two players were moving on from the roster, and there's obviously some other rumors that are floating around, probably from some leakers here and there, that it's Advent and Kaze. If that's the case, I've got to say I'm kind of for that at this point. Unfortunately, I don't want to sort of, if this is going to be the end of Advent and Kaze and their career in Counter-Strike, I don't want to sort of disparage the career because they've both had a really solid career. They've both been, stalwarts of the Asian Counter-Strike scene, and they've done a really amazing job with their career. But, at a certain point, I guess you do have to kind of be a little bit realistic and say that this is not working and something has to change. And those two do seem to be the most obvious choices. If if Orman's going to come into the roster as well, it's something has to go. And I think Advent's the first one on the chopping block. And if your Orpa is not maybe up to scratch, then he's probably the next one.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, look, everyone knows I wasn't a fan of this Almond switch coming in Mozio, right? I'm looking at the way they were playing. Damyo was, even in losses, looking like the best rifler in the server, if you ask me, right? Entering, doing everything single-handedly. Kaze has a good map, has a bad map. You can't afford that, especially if you're looking to be at the very tip of the top, is at least, even in Asia. Even Mercury, man, it looks like he's just lost in this new roster, right? He was struggling so much. I guess he's not really comfortable with some of the spots he's playing, giving up a lot of maybe more comfortable positions he's used to, perhaps. He was the lowest rated player, which is not something I'm used to seeing. We're talking about Damyo, Mercury, and Mozio, who are a core trio, one of the best we had in Asia when a rifling core, right? And now it's just Damyo who's actually doing any damage. For Advent getting taken out, 100% understandable. He's done a lot. I agree with you. Maybe in the coaching role, a scouting / coaching role, I think would be perfect for him. I think he still has a role which he can play in Tyloo or any other team for that matter. But for me, I'm looking at Tyloo as an org. Shanghai Major's coming up, right? Now, hopefully, if Mongolz or Lynn Vision are able to make it to the elimination stage, we get another spot, which makes things great for Asian Counter-Strike. You get 3 spots for the Shanghai Major. But if that doesn't happen, and there's a real chance that doesn't really happen, let's be real, and Tyloo, as an org, missing out on the first CSGO / CS2 major in Shanghai is going to be unthinkable for not just Tyloo, but the massive fan base to have over there. And knowing Tyloo, I think they're going to make some very drastic changes. The rumors which you mentioned, I think that a couple of new players are picking up. I don't know them very well. I think it's an academy team player and whatnot. But at this point, I'm okay to try new stuff out. For me, it's like just get Mozio back, unless he benched himself and doesn't want to come back.
I mean, legit.
Yeah, Pilski.
I have to say, the Tyloo bench is famous, right, boys?
It is.
For me, the solution is sitting on the bench for both of those spots. Just put him back in the team. It's not hard. Dan King's on the bench. Mosey's on the bench. Put him in the fucking team. Give it a go. Just take him. Didn't they qualify for Chengdu? Just take him to Chengdu, bro. Put Advent in the coach role. That's actually the Chinese super team. Is it not?
I think that
is a Chinese super team.
Look, Dan King's done though.
But Blez,
it is, but Dan King's done. Dan King's done. I think it's. Yeah, he's just stuck with not stuck. I think he's doing very well in streaming right now.
I talked to
Dan King, and he's not coming back.
The Chinese
he's going to Shroud
passes when I was at Extreme Zone, and they were saying Dan King's never coming back to pro play. He's like basically the Counter-Strike, the Chinese Counter-Strike version of Tyler 1, if you know Tyler 1. So he's obviously a bit of an entertainer. Let's just put it that way. One other thing that I actually wanted to talk about here though with Tyloo is what happened to Mercury, man. Like, this guy was one of the hottest prospects at the previous couple of RMRs, and we've been hyping him up, bigging him up, and he was the 3rd lowest rated player at the event for Asia RMR. He performed worse individually than Advent. Like, what happened to Mercury? I just don't understand. He's gone from 100 to 0.
I think Almond coming in, right? I feel like Almond was having some spots. Again, I could be very wrong here, but I think it was playing certain spots in Mercury, or rather Mosey was playing, and they've moved a few pieces around. And I just felt like Mercury was super uncomfortable with, how he was playing there. And it's so tragic. You have one of the best riflers in China, and you're just not putting him in the right spot. So not just getting an Almond, but moving the pieces around where things aren't working out, right? It feels like an old boys club with some shit happening in Tyloo over there, which is such a travesty, honestly. And it's you just need to fix things. You need to change things, like drastic changes. That's it.
Yep. I don't know if there's much more to really say about that one for Tyloo, but we were. I don't know. Were you guys surprised? I wasn't even really surprised, to be quite honest. I saw them losing that game, and I was thinking, yep, this is kind of par for the course particularly when it comes to RMRs. Like, this team has always just disappointed. Obviously, this is the biggest disappointment that they've had at the RMRs of late, but core of this roster has never really performed well at RMR, so I wasn't really surprised at all to see them losing that game against Atox. Yeah, that's
in that fashion, though. In that fashion, you win the first map 13-3, which is your opponent's map pick, right? And then it's just flat 13-4, 13-2. not what you expect, and nothing against Atox,
Sure.
by the way. They played a great game, honestly, but still, you're Tyloo, right? You're supposed to be at
I
least
think
making
at the end of the
closer,
day,
yeah.
it's kind of like a disappointing end to a disappointing number of choices from Tyloo over time. You know, the stubbornness of recycling the same players, keeping the same players in the roster, despite, you know, firepower issues and stuff like that. I think at the end of the day, you know, it's basically you reap what you sow. What happened at this RMR, and hopefully this is going to be the final nail in the coffin that leads to some positive change, because there's so many players in China and particularly on that roster that have potential, and I'm keen to see what they do next. And similar to other teams that we're going to talk about, it's not like this major disappointment is the end of what this team is doing. Like, they have other events coming up that they are going to be at. So, you know, this needs to be, you know, where they take a U-turn into something different and focus on what they have coming up, and try to actually start to build something.
Yeah. All right, let's talk Atox. I mean, this is going to go from 0 to 100, right? Because I think while Tyloo severely underperformed, underdelivered, disappointed, Atox were the antithesis of that, and they really not overperformed, you know? Like, we knew that they were a good team. We knew that they could be a challenger at an event like this, and honestly, they did a fantastic job. Like, they toppled Tyloo. They were able to take it close against Grayhound. There was a point where I actually maybe thought that Atox was going to be able to potentially beat Grayhound in that series after watching that second map. But obviously, they did eventually fall to Grayhound, and I don't think there's really much shame in losing to Grayhound ultimately. But yeah, I have to say, I mean, like, this is just further concrete information that the Mongolian scene is continuing to thrive, and it's not even just right at the top end, like where we might have sort of talked about, for example, ANZ, right, where Grayhound was always one of the best teams at the Asia RMR, but beyond that, it was kind of like, well, whichever second best team from ANZ goes to the Asia RMR, we're not really expecting much from them. But at least when it comes to the Mongolian scene, top team, Mongolz, you're always expecting them to do well. At least in this case, Atox coming in as the second team from Mongolia. I mean, fantastic work. I've got to give a lot of credit to them. Yeah, it's painful for them to miss out on qualifying for the major. They got pretty close. They had some pretty good games, but I think that's a really positive sign, and I'm really glad to see it. So credit to Atox as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think Mick especially, or MIQ, I think it's called MIQ, Mongolian IQ, his name is what I've heard, he was pretty sharp. He was very, very sharp. I really liked him. For me, Cabal was I wouldn't say a revelation, but the fact that he's still playing at this level, there were games where he just came alive and was saving his team, right? It was a beast. I'm going to be a little critical of a couple of things about his team. One thing would be the consistency of each of the players. I feel is lacking. Like, you'll have a game where Dobu and Cabal are the ones carrying the team, and then you have Mick having a great game. It's like, if we could have like a consistent core of players in that team who can just deliver like 15 to 20 frags every single game, I think that would be great. Obviously, that I'm not sure why that's happening. Number two would be accuracy. I don't think that's his team. I think he really struggled individually throughout the entire game. And I feel like if you pick up, I don't know, man, like Annihilation or someone, any other opera, right? I think they would actually do a little bit better. But apart from that, I agree with you. I think they punched well with their weight at times, and the wins they had were very convincing. I mean, mentally as well, they seem to be a team who seem to be very just mentally strong, right? Getting destroyed by Tyloo and then coming back and in turn wrecking them 2 maps back to back. They had that close game against Grayhound as well, where usually if you have Grayhound and an Asian team in an OT game, you're expecting Grayhound to get the win. And Atox actually able to convert that. It was great. So all in all, just, yeah, great stuff from Atox. Maybe a couple of changes down the line. But again, goes to show the Mongolian scene is pretty fucking
I'd
solid.
agree. I think, like, I swear to God, like, you know, the Mongolian fans of Jordan's podcast going to call me a hater. Still not sold, you know, and they're still not a tier 1 team in Asia in my eyes. They're good.
They already are calling you a hater, by the way.
But they didn't.
Pilski guy
this guy hates Atox, bro. Literally, go back to like 4 years ago when they made that Tiger team, and I was like, this team is sick. This team's gonna win everything in Asia. Like, legit, bro. I've been supporting your scene and like being like Mongolia #1 for years now.
For the Mongolian fans, we've probably been fans of Mongolian CS longer than you've even known Mongolian CS existed.
Probably.
Like, unironically.
That is true.
Like legit, I've been such a fan. I watched the original Machine Gun run just like all of you guys. You know, fucking Blair was there.
Bro, I I met Zulkenberg. Just a story, quick aside, right? I knew about Zulkenberg in 2014 when he was studying in India, and he got picked up by this team called Virtual Impact when they were qualifying for ESWC, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? And they're like, dude, just watch him play, and he just fucking blitzed, no pun intended, everyone in India. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's great. And then I'm grabbing a smoke with him, and he's like, yeah, my friend's coming. I'm like, oh, what's your friend's name? Machine Gun. I'm like, he good? He's like, oh, he good. I'm like, okay. And then they fucking destroy, I think, was it Vox at that time?
Yeah,
it's like Sponge's team, right? Vox Seminar. So yeah, we just have high expectations of Mongolian counters right now, and we have to be real. By the way, I agree with Pilski. They punch well above their weight, but they're no way close to the level of the Mongols or even Lynn Vision right now.
That. And I Grayhound did beat them very solidly on 2 of the maps, and then the only one they won was in OT. Let's be real. That's not a team on the same level. That's a team that's challenging the top couple of teams in Asia and able to take maps here and there, but they're not in the same tier. They need to win series over the top couple of teams in Asia. And for me, no offense, guys, but Tyloo shitting the bed and getting stomped by a team like Atox and clearly not playing anywhere near like their BC game, this event is not I'm not going to say not a legit win, because like they earned that top 4, and I have massive respect for this Atox roster, and I agree. I think the potential is there. If the consistency comes up and maybe that they can make like 1 or 2 roster changes, they definitely could play on the level of the Mongols in the future, but they're still not quite there for me yet. So I'm still expecting them to continue being a gatekeeping kind of team in Asia, but they have to earn that spot in the top of Asia. You can't just overhype them, guys. They need to qualify for a major event, beating a very good team. They need to take series off the top couple of teams in Asia more regularly. They need to continually look competitive on a bigger number of maps for me to say they're tier 1 team in Asia. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself or anything like that, and I certainly don't want to imply that they're one of the top teams they are one of the top teams in Asia. I guess there's no doubt about that, but I don't want to necessarily put them in the same tier yet as the top teams. But my reasoning for being excited about this team is that they performed above expectations, and I think they definitely deserve to be applauded for that.
For sure.
Which
and they have like absolute legends of the Mongolian scene. Like these guys have been kicking around for ages, and Dobu and Cabal have always been those kind of explosive players that would just fuck around and drop 30 on a map and win you the game. And I'm all for that, bro.
Yeah, indeed. So good job from Atox. Obviously, we want to see more. We hope that team will come back for the Shanghai Asia RMR and potentially do some damage there as well. I think that they're a pretty good, almost a shoe-in maybe to make it to that event if they stick together as a roster. I think they're definitely better than the vast majority of teams in that East Asian qualifier, so they should be able to do it pretty comfortably. But we'll get to that, obviously, when we get to that. We should move on and talk about Grayhound. This is going to be a little bit of a pain point, I guess, for Pilski and I. I think in particular, you, Pilski, were really getting caught up in the hype train that Grayhound, had kind of rolling a little bit, and I was kind of at that point as well. I really felt that this was going to be, if not a sure thing for Grayhound, a very likely possibility that they would qualify. The only concern that I kind of had about them going into this was that I felt that the field was stronger at this Asia RMR than any of the previous ones. And I think ultimately that is what has brought them undone, because when you look at it, the difference really is Lynn Vision exists in this one. They didn't exist in the previous. Atox exists in this one. They didn't exist in the previous. So that's 2 better teams than their counterparts from the previous RMR. And Atox took Grayhound to 3 maps. They took them to an OT in that match before they played against Lynn Vision. And then Grayhound had to go on to play Lynn Vision, which they ultimately obviously lost to. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that the only reason that they lost was because they had to play a long series against Atox. That's not an excuse. But Grayhound, I still think, is a very good team, but they didn't, unfortunately, qualify this time. And I don't necessarily think it's because they played poorly or they were a bad team. You know, they I guess, have performed under expectations because expectations are very high for this roster. But I almost want to put that down to the rest of the field being stronger than it has been at previous RMRs, and Grayhound getting a bit of a wake-up call here that it's not quite so easy to stay on top when there are teams like Lynn Vision poking their heads around. So Yes, it's a disappointing result for Grayhound. And obviously, as we've seen, there's quite a bit of a fallout now for Grayhound, who are now, I guess, ex-Grayhound, because that organization has closed its doors, unfortunately. Which I'll say, I thought that they would have gotten at least another major cycle, because I think there's still a team that you can reliably look at and say they're a good shot to qualify for the major. But I guess that, unfortunately, that tap ran dry a little bit too quickly for that. So, look, I still think that if they stick together, they're going to be a team that we're going to be hyping up about going into the next Asia RMR. They will be pretty bitterly disappointed to miss out on this one, but you can't win them all. And I hope actually for Grayhound in particular that this will be a wake-up call that they can't, go so lackadaisically through these Asia RMRs. Maybe they are going to now need to dig into their own pockets and have a boot camp internationally rather than practicing against AU teams. Something. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not involved in the team. I can't obviously offer any kind of insight into that, but it's going to have to be maybe a little bit of a step up actually from Grayhound if they now want to continue to maintain their dominance as part of the top echelon of Asian teams.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts on this, and obviously the organizational aspect of it adds a little bit more, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet just to the RMR, and I'm sure it's something we'll talk about more in the future. Simply put, they played a couple of important games, a couple of important series, and the maps that they lost, they got kind of blown out of the water, by the top teams. Lynn Vision and Mongolz beat them, 13 single digits in maps that were not close. And that's not good enough to qualify for the major. Talking about the RMR specifically, this is what having 8-team RMRs is all about, boys. Like, fuck yeah. We finally have a couple of more teams. Before with these 4-team RMRs, where you can only have like one representative for China, this really shows you how fucking important it is to have 1 or 2 teams represented from the strongest regions, because they, a team like Lynn Vision, even back then, realistically, would have been able to do damage like this. And I'm so happy they stepped up to this level. We'll talk more about that when we talk about them specifically. But yeah, Grayhound just unfortunately not good enough. There are always excuses for every team. There are always reasons for every team as to why they didn't perform up to their expectations. But I don't really particularly think any of them are super valid or super worth focusing on, because at the end of the day, Grayhound has played these same RMRs, these same conditions many times in the past and been able to qualify. And this time they weren't good enough, because the level of Asia right now is very, very high for the top couple of teams who, for the Mongolz, for example, are doing things like boot camping in Europe and putting in the hard yards. So I would agree with Jordan. This is going to be a question now of, Grayhound, for me, I was high on them coming into this event. And I thought that they were going to win the whole event. They definitely did not do that. They definitely did not perform well enough on a couple of maps. I don't think they need any roster changes or anything like that. But for me, this is where I need to see how they respond to losing an opportunity like this. Because let's be real, over the last couple of years, Grayhound has kind of been riding it out on, things like sticker money, which is, what's happening with the organization and whatnot, and just re-qualifying. And this time they haven't been good enough to do that. So I'm keeping an eye on what happens with Grayhound organization-wise and what their results look like with this roster at the upcoming tournaments they've got attending on the horizon.
I would agree. I mean, I agree with most of your points here, but I think the one reason why I didn't have complete faith, I still felt they would have qualified, I won't lie, right? But we did have to account for the fact that with Dexter coming in, they've been together for like a couple of months, right? And they've been having great win rate and whatnot, but the competition is just not there. It's just not there in Australia. And no matter how much you can scrim against, Bandits, Kangaroos, or Rooster, whoever the fuck you're playing against, the level's just not there, number one. Number two, you have not really been tested. This new lineup. Again, you got to remember Dexter coming in, this is not the same Grayhound he was on, right? It's a different Grayhound. A couple of players are different from what he was earlier on. And when you don't have enough reps in officials, when things really matter, when things start to crumble, it can be rough. That's the second thing. I agree. I think there was a little bit of complacency as well for them coming in, which really shouldn't have happened with the level of Asian CS is at right now. And fourthly, I'm not going to point any fingers, but even individually speaking, I feel like can't pin too much in Dexter. He's an IGL. Maybe things not quite working out. Their Ins was still doing his stuff. Vexx was great, actually. Some of the maps are winning. He was finding mad impact. Ali was just rough, dude. Ali was just some very questionable decision making coming out from him. And we know how much of a, an aggressive personality he is. Right? He's very rambunctious, very loud, which is great for the team when you're winning and whatnot. But there are many times I'm watching in those games. Sure, in that complete blowout against Lynn in the final map, it's not just him, it's everyone else. But it was so many moments I'm like, Ali, what are you doing? Why are you, going for the small little mistakes? And that comes from being, from it being drilled in him that he can just get away with this when you're playing down under. You can't do that against Mongolz. You can't do that against Lynn or even fucking Atox or Tyloo. And I feel like you need to shake that off. Now, how do you do that? I'm not sure. I really don't know. Right now, we don't have an org and whatnot. But I believe with you when I say, when you said that we don't need any lineup changes, I still think it's a very, very strong team overall. They just need a few more reps going forward. I hope they kind of stick around, honestly. I hope, this whatever. I saw a tweet from Vox coming back and whatnot, always, and maybe Sponge
that
is cooking
pops
something
up every
in the kitchen.
12 months, nothing ever happens. So I don't know.
Listen, I hope it's true because I think it'd be a fucking tragedy to just lose this particular 5-man unit. And I feel, in a way, sure, it's tragic and missing out on first CS2 major and everything, but it's a good kick in the ass, reminding that things are not going to be as easy as it was before. You just can't rely on coasting along, you're getting the sticker money. So hopefully they come back stronger, I guess. I like those guys. They're great. But yeah, hopefully they come back stronger.
I mean, I think there's multiple avenues in which direction this could go. I think at least for the foreseeable future, they did sort of indicate that they're going to be sticking together, and that's not a surprise to me. They've got a couple of events to attend. I think they just called for Dallas. They've got ESL Pro League as well that's going to be coming up. So they've got a couple of things to play in. I'm sure there's going to be interest from around ANZ. There's always going to be orgs that are going to reach out to a team like Grayhound when they're on offer. As to whether or not they're going to be able to provide a good enough offer to this team, that will remain to be seen. So whether or not they will stay with an Australian org or an ANZ org, maybe that's probably the first option. Obviously, there will potentially be some interest from sort of your tier 2, maybe EU, NA organizations that want to try to sort of throw their hat in the ring and maybe find a team that can qualify through to the major, get some sticker money. So I think that's definitely something that they're going to be fielding as well. Look, I mean, even at the moment, these Chinese teams, some of them are kind of exploring what's happening in ANZ, in CS, in other titles as well.
It's a big thing.
I mean, if JiJieHao can do it with a Middle Eastern team, why can't any other
has an Australian team in
Valorant
right now. So a fully Australian team. And there are other Australian players who are actively playing Valorant in China. So the Chinese angle is definitely there. I think it's an interesting question there, and I'll just leave it at this because I could go on about this forever, but it's a very interesting question of Grayhound has always been the team that they're quite happy to sit in Australia and qualify, and they always do qualify. Now, this is very clearly an example of the practice and the preparation leading into this event has let them down. Do they need to pull their socks up and find some kind of opportunity where they actually do go abroad a bit more than what they've been doing, and try to hit another level of CS than they have been at? Or are they just going to try to go for a similar formula going into the Shanghai major and see this one as a bad couple of maps or a bad day at the office? We'll see.
It's a bit of a... it's a bit of a difficult one to say because obviously any time that they spend out of ANZ, they're potentially losing out on ranking points, as we saw towards the end of last year with the likes of CCT and stuff like that. And then you lose out on ranking points, you lose out on the direct invites for the ANZ, stuff like that. So it's kind of a little bit of a balancing act that they will have to play if that's going to be the route that they go down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's no doubt, and we can sort of transition this conversation now to Lynn and Mongolz. There's no doubt that the teams that have had more exposure internationally of late, and in particular the Mongolz, a team that we know can sort of play in Europe. They boot camped in Europe. I mean, those guys were hitting FPL like crazy. I think it was Mazzino and Techno were like number 2 and 4, or I don't know what it was, but they were basically like up there in FPL in EU.
I think in the top 15 of EU FPL, like 4 of them were Mongolz players, or the top 12 or something. 4 of them were Mongolz players. They were grinding, bro.
And I don't know if can you really read into that too much? Probably not.
All
you
can read into it is that they're putting the reps in, like they're grinding the pugs. They are getting their fucking mechanics up to scratch.
Yeah, and I think it's no doubt really that when you look at what Mongolz have been able to do and how good they've been able to get and where they've been able to sort of take this team, those opportunities to play against the best competition or better competition is going a long way. I don't know what it looks like necessarily from Lynn Vision's perspective in terms of what practice they're able to get internationally and stuff like that from China. But even then, they've always been a team that's been a threat. And I was a little bit concerned actually about Lynn Vision coming into this event. I thought they were on a bit of a bad run of form. But I mean, if you turn up when it matters, we always knew that this was going to be a team that could compete at the top level of Asian CS. And they were able to do that on the day when it mattered. And they've got a spot in the major. And obviously that's fantastic news for China because it's been a very long time since we saw a Chinese team actually manage to make it through to the major. It has been 3 majors in a row, Mongolia and ANZ. And obviously China's been missing out for a while. And it's kind of the perfect time, I guess, for them to kind of start getting back into the swing of things because Shanghai is coming up toward the end of the year. And I guess, now we're starting to think about, okay, can there be potentially a third qualification spot given to the Asia RMR? Well, I'm looking at this, and if I'm Lynn Vision, I'm saying we have our own destiny, our own region's destiny in our hands now. Like, it's not up to anyone else anymore. It's up to us to make sure that we can send a Chinese team to the Chinese major. Because if we can go 3-2, 3-0, 3-1, whatever, and make it through to the next stage, you can not guarantee, but you can very nearly guarantee that at least one Chinese team, you would think, should be able to make it to top 3 in the next Asia RMR. So they have a lot of weight upon their shoulders, I'm sure, from their region. Obviously, they're going to be ecstatic. We saw that in the celebrations that they had when they won. And further to that point, even beyond the fact that Lynn Vision is going to be looking for that kind of thing, we've seen from Techno in the interview that he did that he wants to do that for the region as well. And to be honest with you, it doesn't feel like there is a better time than now for Asian CS to have its best opportunity to maybe make it out to the next stage of the major, out of the opening stage, I think is what it's called now. So that's my takeaway. Lynn Vision, Mongolz, very good stuff from them. And look, at least Mongolz, I have quite a bit of hope that they're going to be able to go deep at the major. Deeper.
I think so too. I think, I'm just going to say, Mongolz going to make it to the elimination stage. I'm looking at the way they're playing CS right now. They're just not like, earlier it's like, oh, Mongols are really good in the region. No, dude, these guys are like, I don't know. I don't even know why they're so much better than other Mongolian teams. It's so far apart. Like the way they're playing CS is just proper tier 1, tier 1.5 levels, if you ask me, like compared to like EU CS, right? They are, and this is like, even considering they were taking down some pretty solid teams back then. Remember that best of 3 against Heroic would almost knock them out, right? It comes down to an overpass, a little bit of a fuck up from Techno 4K. But I feel like they've really grown from that. Even looking at someone like Senzu, he's just a standout. I don't know from where the fuck this guy came from. I'm looking at Mizzini as well, who we were looking at, and like, maybe this guy's not a good fit, but I was watching with the RMR. His lurks were fucking great. He was working with his team. He was just staying alive, doing a great job. His anchoring had improved quite substantially as well, and I'm sure it can improve further down the line. This team is, I agree with it. Like, for the very first time since the major system was introduced, this is the very first time where I have faith that this team is not just going to be, oh, they showed up, they ruined everyone's pick'ems, and they had a good time and went back home. No, I think they're going to make it elimination stage. I think they're going to give Asia the 3rd spot. They look fan-fucking-tastic. I think Blitz and Mara deserve the Asian Counter-Strike Medal of Honor, whatever the fuck that is. I'll make one.
If anyone's going to make one, I think you're the most qualified. So I'm keen to see. It's probably going to come out with some fucking skulls and like flames and shit on it. It's going to be like hardcore as fuck, but
yeah. like some horses. Yeah, some AK-47. There's got to be better than a Blast trophy, I'll tell you that.
Well, look, this is a guy who didn't get hired by Blast, by the way. I don't know if there's anything going on.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I think, look, Lynn Vision, for me, I'm still a little bit worried about them going into the major cycle. I'm happy that they did make it, and it was fucking sick. Like, they were obviously so emotional about it, similar to the IEM Chengdu qual that they won. I got to cast that, and they were fucking over the moon. This team has so much passion. You can't be against them, bro. If you ever watch a Lynn Vision game and watch them win an important game, you're instantly a fan, because these guys just legit just radiate passion. They're like literally a bunch of the boys who have stuck together for so long and stayed in the same team. You know, they don't backstab each other. They just like legit stick together and grind through the fucking hard times and actually, you know, get shit done. So I was so happy to see them win. Starry, fucking 1.4 rating in 7 maps over the Asia RMR. This dude absolutely fucked everyone. Arguably best player in China right now. And look, we'll see what we're going to get out of Lynn Vision. I'm a little bit worried about them because I'm even seeing, up and down results. They lost the Challenger Melbourne qual to New Happy, and there's a reason why we were like, I don't know about Lynn Vision coming up into this one, because we were talking about the international events, that they had played, and some of them were not so impressive as some of their other runs where they have looked good. So I still have my questions. They played fucking phenomenal at this Asia RMR. They did kind of just dominate Grayhound for the spot, and they earned that spot. So what will they do with that spot? I'm eagerly awaiting to see. Yeah.
I think the two takeaways for me personally from Mongolz and Lynn Vision would be, I think the mental thing, right? For Lynn Vision, because we're just talking about them right now, we've always had this question as to when they arrive at lands, when it's against, teams of a slightly higher caliber, they just completely struggle. I saw this in IM Sydney, was the first CS2 event right there, where they were just kind of flat altogether, considering they had some close games in EPL just a few weeks prior. And we've had this, right? We've had this with even Extreme Slam, where they just got destroyed by the Mongols. So for the fact that they were able to kind of delete the memory of the first map they had against Grayhound and then just completely dominate on Anubis and on Nuke, it's a very good sign for them. Like, hopefully it's kind of like, the catalyst that just breaks through that barrier where they're like, listen, we can actually do it on land. Secondly, for Mongolz, my biggest issue with this team has always been them struggling to close it out. They'll have like insanely massive leads, completely in control, and they let it slip. They didn't show that this time. Now, yes, there's a caveat that the opposition here was not at the same caliber as, let's say, a Katowice or Cologne or whatever, but it's a good sign that they're winning the games they're supposed to win extremely convincingly. I think that's my two big takeaways for Lynn Vision and Mongolz, and hopefully
I think for Mongolz, just to touch on them, because I mostly talked about Lynn Vision. Yeah, I'm keen to see what they can do in the main major cycle. Like all 5 of them in the top 8 rated players at this tournament, although they didn't have a big sample size. They only played 4 maps to qualify for the major, but no one else was really able to take them to more maps. So you beat what's in front of you, I suppose. But all of them seem like they're playing really well. Blitz and Techno clearly still the standouts. If I just want to see again, like when they play some of these absolute top tier EU teams, is Mazzino going to be able to be as impactful and all that kind of stuff? I'm keen to see what we're going to get.
Okay, let's take a look at the groups real quick here, right? For the opening stage, because we now have the seedings and everything. So I'm going to talk about the top teams here. We have Cloud9, we have Eternal Fire, who've been playing fucking great. ENCE, Apex, Heroic, right? That's 5 teams right there. And then we have 9 Pandas, Saw, Ecstatic, Amcal, Koi, Furia, Imperial, Pain, Legacy, and then the Mongolz and Lynn Vision. I'm just saying, man, like, the Mongolz have a real fucking chance to make it through. Even Lynn Vision could definitely do some damage, because I was watching the America's RMR, and I feel like, honestly, the CS there was kind of rough, in all honesty, right? And again, I want to take nothing away from teams who have qualified. They've done a job. We know Mongolz have historically beaten every single Brazilian team they faced off against. That works for us. And even the EU teams coming in, like teams like Amcal, I'm looking at 9 Pandas and Saw. Sure, they made their way to the major, but I'm just looking at the path they had. It wasn't necessarily the hardest path. They didn't have to play a lot of the top teams. And I'm looking at these teams. I'm looking at the way Mongolz have been playing the past few months. I'm like, even Lynn Vision, as long as they don't choke, there is a real chance.
We can only hope.
Gotta believe, Jordan. Like, Tyloo's dead. Gotta believe in the Mongolz now, and Lynn Vision. Let's fucking go.
The teams that, like, these ones coming from the European RMR are probably the kind of teams that Mongolz is able to scrim a fair bit, I'd imagine. So maybe there's something in there. We'll have to sort of wait and see, I guess. But we have faith, we have hope, and haven't had hope for a while. So let's just keep on rolling with that.
It's a weird feeling, dude. Like, I feel happy. Deep down inside, I'm like, holy shit, we have a chance this time. It's not just doom and gloom. I'm not gonna be tuning into the fucking opening stage. I'm like, here we go again. They're gonna get 1 win over a fucking Brazilian team, and they're gonna go 1-3 out. I actually feel we can go 3-1, or maybe 3-0. Who fucking knows? I'm fucking stoked.
Look, I got some breaking news hot off the press that I've just seen on Twitter, which I haven't actually put in our document, but it's in relation to Bad News Kangaroos. Damyo has been put into that roster. It
Ooh,
seems,
shit.
and
Okay.
I did a little bit of chatting with some birdies while you guys were talking, and it seems like it's Hats that has decided to move on. So Damyo getting his opportunity for the first time, I feel, in a legit top ANZ team, which I think is something that he's kind of been knocking on the door for a little while. I've been pretty impressed by what I've seen from him as an individual in the teams that he's been playing, sort of, you know, around the middle of the pack. Obviously, you know, he's always been in like, you know, a 5-6, you know, 4-5-6 kind of a team, and he's been pretty good in those, and he's done really well. But like, there's only so much you can really do. But now in BNK, yeah, I like the pickup. I think he's a good player. I think he deserves the opportunity. So I don't know what that's going to mean for the team, but I hope it goes well. So yeah,
It's crazy. Both Portelli brothers in the top couple of teams in Australia. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
yeah. Look, not really much to touch on there, but obviously just some something to kind of note, because it did tie into one of the next topics that we were going to talk about, which was Vexx Gaming, which is the new roster in ANZ, which is Apoc, Void, Foggers, Kobe, and it was Damyo. I don't know who they've got now as their fifth, but you know, worth mentioning, another ANZ team kind of popping up here. Don't know what we're necessarily going to see from these guys. I'd like to think that they could be a top 4 team. Not sure that they're necessarily going to push Rooster or BNK at this stage, but I think it's a team to keep an eye on.
Yeah, more orgs, more good for OC. Not too much else to say about that, I don't think. Hopefully that can bring the floor of the Oz scene up and give some more practice to the top couple of teams. Yeah, not really much else to say.
All right, we've got a couple of other things that we do need to kind of catch up on that have happened over the last couple of months that we haven't really had a time to talk about because we've been talking Asia RMR. One of which is quite a long time ago. Wings Up disbanded. Kriez and Bloggers, if you remember, were the 2 international players that were in China playing for that roster. At the time that all sort of came out, it was indicated that they were not paid by Wings Up for their time. I don't know whether or not there's been a resolution to that, but I would feel that obviously it's worth talking about because this Wings Up roster was one which we talked about a fair bit, and we didn't have a lot of faith in.
Shout on.
You know, yeah. I'm sad that it has come to this for these guys. Like, I have a lot of empathy in their situation. Obviously, you don't deserve that, you know, and it sort of sucks. But yeah, I mean, I think the writing was kind of on the wall for me with Wings Up. Unfortunately, apparently, someone just dipped and the money tap turned off, and that was that.
Yeah.
And they just got left high and dry.
That's cooked. That's
RIP. Yeah, I mean, look, completely unacceptable that the players didn't get paid, but yeah, I didn't have any other opinion on this team, honestly.
Yeah, so that's one thing. The GenG CS team, I don't know if you guys saw that that roster was announced, and I've got to I got to say, I have no idea of anyone who's on that roster, which was a bit of a surprise.
To quote people from the HLTV forums, which I often do, literally who? Like,
yeah.
Literally who? I feel like some of the GenG guys are, hey guys, you know, CS2 is out, we need to pick up a team, just walked into a PC bang and they're like, all right, who's playing Counter-Strike? And see like 5 randoms just sitting around and they're like,
Bleh,
you guys are a team now.
Look, don't
You're
talk
with
too much
GenG.
shit, okay? This is the recruiting tactics of Asia. We remember MVP PK just rolling into retake servers and seeing, you know, this guy's probably got some talent. And those players went on to be very good at Valorant. So I wouldn't be talking shit, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know what will come of this one, but we'll see.
Fair.
I don't have a huge amount of faith.
But for now, who?
Yeah.
Can't wait to see them go out in, what do we reckon, 16th to 24th in the China Open qualifier. I'll see you there, boys.
What are they even playing in? Like, I don't think they've even, like, they're not in ESL Challenger. They're not in any of these qualifiers that have been popping around. So I haven't actually seen them play.
I haven't seen a single game of theirs. The team's not even showing up on HLTV right now, and
it seems like a weird choice.
Yeah.
But I guess there's something going on there for GenG. They presumably know better than we do, and I mean, I wish it the best, but yeah,
do they
don't have a lot of faith.
I'm not sure they do. But I'm keen to be proven wrong.
Yeah. One other small topic is Savage to Sprout Academy. So Mr. Savage has gone international once again. He came back to ANZ for a couple of months, it seemed like, after being in that JiJieHao experiment for a little while, and now he's managed to find his way onto Sprout Academy, which I will say is probably a better avenue to go down than something like JiJieHao. At least it seems like a bit of a more secure pathway, I would assume. But yeah, I mean, obviously wish him the best. Don't really know what's going to come of that one. And yeah, I just think it's kind of cool to see, but I just wonder, like, how does Savage keep getting these opportunities and then there's other players in ANZ that don't? Like, is it...
I think he's just grinding. Like, I think most players don't understand how to network or how to look for opportunities. Most players are kind of 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. Savage has always struck me as someone who's actually all in on Counter-Strike and doing their absolute damnedest to find some opportunities and to take things seriously. And he's shown, you know, his mentality. So I think that's why that's happening. I don't think that other ANZ players, and I think this is more of a thing in Valorant than it is in CS, where ANZ players are actually able to find opportunities abroad and don't realize like they might be able to do that. What I think this is great, and it sounds great on paper, and obviously it's a great opportunity for Savage, but at the same time, Savage is a decent player in Oceania. He's going to Europe now to play in Tier 3. It's not going to be easy, and I don't expect anything to happen from this. Let's be real, because it's such a competitive landscape. You know, for anything to happen, he's going to have to play the what do you call them, Mickey Mouse tournaments, and absolutely grind against like CIS onliners and all of the fucking, you know, Tier 2, Tier 3 European teams. And he's going to have to actually go above and beyond, be something super impressive and super special to be able to earn some kind of next opportunity, you know, and that's not going to be easy. We already seen Oceanic players, like Extremum is the perfect example, go and try to grind in Tier 3 Europe. It's the fucking bloodbath out there. Best of luck to you, soldier. We'll see what happens.
Yep. Good luck. That's all I have to say, Savage. Hope it goes well, but we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it and keep you guys updated as to how that one's playing out. And just before we go, this will be the last topic. Quick update of the Asia standings, because I think they got updated today, which is the 5th of March. Although on the website it says 4th of March, because I assume it's NA time for them. But yeah, Asia standings actually not looking terrible. We got Mongolz 1, Lynn Vision 2, Grayhound 3, Tyloo 4, Atox 5, NKT 6, Rooster 7, New Happy 8, Bad News Kangaroos 9, the Huns 10, and a few other teams kind of hanging around in there as well that are not too bad. And I've got to say, I think this is probably the best that it's looked since it actually got released. There's no fucking dead team in there. There's no... well, I mean, I guess we would have to see how some of these roster changes might go after the Asia RMR, but there's no dead team in the top 10. There's no like weird team where you're like, why are they even in there? They don't really deserve to be there. You can kind of make an argument for most of these teams in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, you might be able to swap a few players around, or swap a few teams around. But I think, generally speaking, at least I'm pretty happy with the overall kind of area that most of those teams are sitting in, which is it's a start.
I think, I don't know, bro. I'm kind of past like it's a start, you know, and I think there's a lot of discourse going on about these rankings at the moment. And obviously people are going to talk a lot more about these rankings, and we could probably do a whole fucking podcast episode on them. But I'm just going to say, like, I'm pretty over it. Like, I feel like the rankings have negatively affected the major qualification system in multiple regions and need a serious review. Because it's pretty fucking cooked, especially the NA RMR that just happened. Like that's crazy. And the fact that it's like happening, and then like the players are complaining about it. People go, "Oh, you're just salty because you lost." It's like, bro, come on. Like, this format is absolutely fucking rooted.
I know, and I feel it's even more pissing off because all Valve have to do is just refresh the rankings right before the RMR starts.
Which should have happened, to be fair, you're right.
Simple
the thing is, like, right? I think the reason why this ranking looks better than it ever has before is because there has been actually some competition within Asia, multiple actual events that teams could play in, and obviously the Asia RMR, and all of that is now actually being calculated in the rankings, where previously, like, we were relying on things like the IESF tournaments and like CCT Oceanias and stuff like that to rank teams, and it's like, you know, that just doesn't work. So my sort of takeaway is that, like, it kind of feels like the ranking almost works if there is enough data. It's just that in a lot of cases, it feels like there's not enough data, and it also needs to be updated a lot more often than it is. It was like 3 months or something since it last got updated. It should be bare minimum, I would say, at least every month. And if you're going to be using it as a really legitimate representation of where things sit, probably every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Ooh. All right. Let them know.
Yeah, Val.
Well, that's all the topics we've got. Don't know if you guys have anything else to say, but how's that?
In case we're not doing an episode before the major, let's fucking go, Mongolz.
I don't know when the next
fucking go. Let's
I
fucking
don't
go.
know when the
Division
next
2.
episode's going to be. We'll figure that one out when there's something to talk about, probably. And that may not be till after the RMR, depending on, I guess what's going on in Asia. And hopefully if Mongolz or Lynn is able to do something and give us something to sort of sink our teeth into, that'll be fun. But either way, I guess we'll end it there. It's a bit of a shorter one, but either way, hope you guys enjoyed it. And you can like, comment, subscribe, go to buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy if you would like to help us out financially. Otherwise, we'll catch you in the next one. Hey guys, just at the end of this video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Jean, who is my first supporter on buymeacoffee.com. If you'd also like to support me financially or any of my content, make sure to check out the link. It is in the description box below.